question that I've seen come up inside the GenerateBlocks or GeneratePress community 100 times is a good starting place for somebody brand new using GenerateBlocks. And I've done hundreds of videos using the system, but I've never created a beginner's guide, so that's what we're going to do here today. If you've never used GenerateBlocks before, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the interface, and we'll build some things out to get you started on the right path going forward. But before we dive in, I just want to give a quick thanks to this video's sponsor, PyCalendar.
PyCalendar is the easiest and most flexible event calendar plugin for WordPress. In 5 minutes or less, you can turn any post on your website into an event that displays on a front-end calendar. PyCalendar is compatible with all themes and page builders and is super easy for both you and your clients to use. Packed with amazing features like recurring events, blackout dates, e-commerce integrations, and more, you won't miss the old bloated calendar plugins you used in the past. We have a lifetime deal available as well, so be sure to visit pycalendar.com to learn more.
The only plugin I have active on this site so far is my GP Premium plugin. This has to do with the GeneratePress theme, which we're not going to cover in this video, but I just wanted to show you that it is here. It's just here because it's going to make it easier for me to demo some of these things. Now you can use GenerateBlocks with or without the GeneratePress theme. It definitely works better with it as there's some pretty nice integrations. But the first thing we need to do is go to the plugin repo and install the GenerateBlocks plugin. To do that, we'll just make sure we're here on our plugin screen and we'll click the Add New button. Over here in the Search Plugins field, I'm going to go ahead and search for GenerateBlocks, and we can see it should be the first result here by Tom, and we'll go ahead and install and activate this plugin. Now that we have it installed, you'll notice a link for GenerateBlocks settings over here in your sidebar, and if we go to the settings page, there's only really two things for you to deal with. One is the global max width setting. This is the content width on your website. Now, because I'm using GeneratePress, it's bringing that in from my theme at 1280 pixels, which is what I've set there. But if you're using a different theme, you'll be able to set this value here in pixels. The other option is the CSS print method, and from here you have two choices, either an external file or inline embedding. The external file is going to make your site a little bit faster as it's better for performance. However, sometimes it can get hung up in caching, so a lot of times when I'm developing, I'll go with the inline embedding option, and then once the site goes into production, I'll switch this over to external file. If you do ever notice that you're setting some styles but they're not showing up in the front end, and you're using this external file method, you can always go back to the settings page and click the Regenerate CSS files, and that will usually clear it up. We'll go ahead and save those changes, and now we can go into a page and start playing with GenerateBlocks. So I'll just hover over Pages and we'll click Add Page, and we'll just call this Playground for now. If we open up the block inserter here, you can see our GenerateBlocks blocks are at the top of the screen here. We have 8 different blocks to choose from in the free version, and as we build out some demo pieces in this video, we're going to go through using all of these. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and drag a text block onto the page, and we'll just put some text into it so we can take a look at the settings. When we have one of our GenerateBlocks blocks selected, over here on the right-hand side, you'll see there's both a settings panel and a styles panel. We'll take a look at this settings panel first. Here you can see we have some specific options having to do with our text block. Now these settings can change depending on which block you have selected. For example, if I add a button block in here, you'll see we have some different options than when we just had that text block selected. But here in the text block, we have the option to add a icon, which we can choose from the library or paste in our own SVG code. We can also change this tag name from anything in the drop-down list. Now, one of the first quirks you might notice is when you bring in a text block, you'll see that it has a paragraph tag name by default, but of course we could change this to an H1, for example. You'll see when we did that, if we look back at the list view here, we're getting the GenerateBlocks headline block icon for this block. It's actually changed this block type from a text block to a headline block. But if we were to use this control here to change that tag name, this works the same as the one over here on the side. Back to a paragraph, you can see this went back to a text block. Essentially, the headline block and text block are the same block, but the tag name is different based on which one you drag in. If you drag in a text block, it's going to be a paragraph. If you drag in a headline block, it's going to be a headline. However, you can switch between either one of these seamlessly, so it doesn't really matter which one you bring in. Both of them will work. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this button block for now so we can focus just on the text block here and start looking at some of the style options. So again, I have this text block selected, and if we go over here in the right-hand side into our Styles tab, we have all the different style controls for this block. Now this panel is going to look the same for every GenerateBlocks block you bring in, which is nice because it keeps it consistent from one block to the next, and we have a ton of styling controls here. So let's go through this. At the top, you can see a class that has been assigned to this text block. Now by default, GenerateBlocks is going to assign a class to every block you bring in. You'll see because this is a text block, it got the class GB-text- a random string of numbers and characters. Now this will be a unique class for every block, which will just make sure that when you make changes to this, it won't affect anything else. One of the benefits to using GenerateBlocks Pro is you can add your own classes to each one of the elements right here inside these settings, which gives you some more global control. But in the free version, we can only use the class that was assigned to this by default. Now underneath that, we have a few different selection options. By default, you're going to be making changes to the main selector, which is just this selector by itself. But if you wanted to make some styling controls to the hover state, we can click on hover here, and you can see the selector has been changed. It's now that same class, but its targeting is hover or focus. Now any changes we make to the styling here will only happen on hover and focus. On this block in particular, we also have a link selector, which would select any links within the text, meaning if I just grab this word text here and added a link to it, and if we select this links button here, we're only going to be controlling the styling for any links inside this text block. Here we can also manage our selectors. Some blocks will give you some additional selectors. Here on the text block, we just have that main selector, hover, and focus, so we don't see any of those other options here, but we might see some of those later as we go through some of these different block types. It's just good to know that this is here right away in case you're looking for something you can't find. As you probably already noticed, having a basic understanding of HTML and CSS is really handy if you're going to use GenerateBlocks. A lot of builders will obscure things like class names or pseudo selectors by giving them their own unique names that maybe make them a little bit more user-friendly. GenerateBlocks really relies on the language of CSS and HTML, so if you have that basic understanding, I think you can get up to speed a whole lot easier in GenerateBlocks because all of these things will seem really familiar. However, if you've never written CSS before, it's going to take a little bit of getting used to. Now, there are pros and cons to this, but for me, this is a huge reason why I use GenerateBlocks. It uses the same language as HTML and CSS, so I don't have to go around and try to find all these proprietary settings. If I know how it works in CSS, I know how it works inside GenerateBlocks. The next thing you'll find in our styles panels here are all of our breakpoints. It's going to default to all screens, which is your desktop breakpoint, and all the settings you set on desktop will trickle down to tablet and mobile as well. However, you'll probably find that you need to make specific changes on the tablet breakpoint or mobile breakpoint, and you can switch to these, and when they're selected, any settings that you set here inside the style controls will only be applied to that breakpoint and lower. So anything you do on desktop will trickle down to tablet and mobile, anything you do on tablet will trickle down to mobile, and anything you do on mobile is just for those mobile settings. Now there are some additional settings here. For instance, if you just wanted to target your tablet or your tablet and mobile, you can do that from here. Again, inside GenerateBlocks Pro, you can actually create your own custom media queries, which is really nice when you want to target some of those in-between sizes. And although this may seem complex, this gives us a ton of flexibility. For example, if I wanted to target my tablet and mobile, but only the hover state on that, I can combine these two options here, and now any styles I change inside the panel will only affect tablet and mobile when the element is hovered. Being able to use all of these in combination really makes this system extremely flexible. We'll go ahead and go back to our desktop breakpoint in our main selector here so we can start going through some of the style controls. Now each one of these have a ton of controls hidden behind an accordion. We won't go through each and every single one, but I kind of want to give you an overview of what all is here. In the layout panel, we can find things like the display controls. Each one of those different controls might have some different settings here inside of grid or flex layouts. In the sizing, we can set widths and heights. In the spacing, we can set things like padding and margin. In the typography, we can set text color, font sizes, font styles, and all of the things relating to typography. Backgrounds, we can choose a background color or add our own background types like image or gradient or overlay. Under borders, we can set both the border thickness and color as well as the border radius. Inside of position, we could change this to relative or absolute or sticky. We can also set our inset values and overflow controls here. Inside the effects panel, we can set things like box shadows, transitions, filters, text shadows, and transforms. This also has opacity, which you might find yourself using fairly often. The media settings really only apply to things like your image block or your shape block. Here we have options for lists, so if you have something like an ordered or unordered list, you can change the list type here, put a different image in there instead of a bullet, and you can change that list style position. There are a few settings under More, which is just kind of like the junk drawer here. We see pointer events, cursor, fill color, and stroke color, which would have to do with your SVG elements. Not every CSS control is in this panel, but the vast majority of them is. Of course, it's going to take a while to memorize where all these settings are, but there's a couple features that will really help you out. Let's say, for instance, I wanted to set my background color. Instead of going in here and going into backgrounds and finding the color, if I didn't know where that is, I can use this search box here to just search for background. This will filter down all the controls just to the things that have to do with background. Now, while it isn't just background color, I do find background color here along with anything else that has to do with my background. Same thing if I wanted to find border controls, I can search for border, and now it's surfaced all the border controls here. This is really handy if you want to move quickly through the style panel or if you're just trying to hunt something down. You'll see when you've searched for something, you get this little bar here showing you what you searched for, and you can click the X to escape that search and get back full control of your panel. You also have an option here to filter the controls. By default, it's going to be set to show all, but you can also set this to show controls with value, which will only show you any controls that you've actually set styles to. We'll reset that filter. We'll go in here and just set a dark background color. And now if I use this show controls with value, it's only going to show background color because that's the only setting I've set here. We also have the option here to show inherited values. This is going to be less helpful in the free version, but in the pro version, this is something I use quite a bit as we can use some different nesting options and descendant selectors, and being able to see what values are being inherited by other classes is extremely helpful. Okay, now that we got kind of a whistle-stop tour of the interface, let's go ahead and try to build something out. So I'm going to select that text block and delete it so we can just start from scratch. And I'll typically use the slash key here to enter my different blocks. That way you can just type them in, but you can of course use the block inserter up here as well. But I'm just going to use my old habits and we'll go ahead and type in a /. Now I'm going to start typing in the word container. We're just going to make a typical section here with some text and an image inside of it. So we'll go ahead and add our container to the page. And the first thing we're probably going to want to do is change the HTML tag of this container. To do that, we're going to go back into the settings here, and under tag name, I want this to be a section tag. Now inside of this, I want to constrain all the contents to the content width of my website. Right now, this container is stretching the full width. In fact, if I close the inserter over here and the settings over here, you'll see that this container is stretching the entire width of the website, and I don't want my text to go all the way from the left side over here to the right side over here, so I need to constrain that. Now, when you add a container to the body of your page here, you'll get this option inside the toolbar that says Add an Inner Container. If we click that, GenerateBlocks goes ahead and adds another container inside the container you had selected. So you'll see this was our section, and this is the container it just added. And it puts a few special properties on this container. If I select it and we open up our styles again and go into the style panel, we'll make sure we turn this filter back to show all. You'll see that we have a red dot here next to sizing and spacing because those have had some settings put into them. If we go into the sizing, you can see our max width is set to our global max width. If you remember back to the beginning of the video, we actually had that max width being inherited by our theme, which was 1280 pixels. This little global button will just relate to that global setting, but you can always uncheck it and put in anything you want. Like if I just wanted this to be 950 pixels, I can type in 950, and now that's the max it can be. Of course, I could change it to 50, and now it's going to be extremely narrow. In my case, I do want to use that global max width, so I'll make sure that's turned on. By using the inner container, it also set our margin on the left and right to auto. That just makes sure that it puts this inner container centered on the screen, so all of our content will go in that center area. Now, our section probably needs some padding. I prefer to put that padding on the outer container. So we'll open up our list view again, go to that container, and now we can go into the spacing setting here and add some padding. I'll start with maybe 80 pixels on the top and 24 on the left and right. So now we have an even 80 on top and bottom and 24 on left and right. We can type in all these values separately, or we can use these link axes here to do the vertical padding and horizontal padding, which would have saved me typing in a few, or we can link all of them together and make them all 80 pixels or whatever value you want. But I'm going to go back to that axis and we'll just make the horizontal padding 24 pixels. Now we can go inside of our inner container here and add our heading and image blocks. So I'll go ahead and add a block here. We'll do a headline block, so I'll search for headline. I'm going to change the tag to an H1 and we'll put "this is my headline." Now a lot of your styling for this is going to be inherited by your theme. Right now I don't have a lot of that set up and we're just going to style things individually just so we can get used to the interface. I probably want to center this headline and make it a little bit bolder. So I can use these quick controls here to change the text alignment to center, which will center this inside of its container. And I can go inside the typography settings, and under font weight, I can change this to bold to make that headline bold. We also might want to change the color of it, which I can do by going here to text color, and we'll just give this the blue color from our themes palette. Now underneath that, let's add an image. So I'll just go to the end of my headline here, press return on my keyboard, and now I can use that / trick again to start typing in image. Now you'll see here we have two different image blocks when I search for image. The first is the core image block, and the second is the GenerateBlocks image block. You'll see that all the GenerateBlocks blocks have a blue icon here, and we're generally going to want to use the GenerateBlocks version if there's one available. The core blocks don't have all the styling controls and the GenerateBlocks ones do, so they're a whole lot easier to work with. We'll go ahead and add this image to our page, and now we have to select the image that we want. We can either upload it, choose something from our media library, or insert it from a URL if we want a hot link to an image somewhere else. We'll go ahead and go into our media library, and we can see that there's no images on this website yet, so I'll go ahead and upload one. I uploaded this picture into the media library and we'll go ahead and select it, and we can see this is now added to our page. If we go into the settings here, you can see the URL for this image is inside this image field, and if we wanted to change it out, we can use this browse button to pick something else from our media library. Now we have all the same styling controls for this image. If we flip back over here to the styles tab, we can do anything we want, like let's say we want to set a border radius. Let's link all those sides together, and I'll put something big like 60 pixels in here just so we can easily see it on the screen. We could add a solid border to it if we'd like, maybe 1 pixel, and we'll make it a gray color. That might be a little bit hard to see on the screen share, but you get the idea that we can use all of these styling controls here to affect our image or our headline or whatever block we want to add to the page. Now, like I mentioned earlier, different blocks have different settings in here. Here you can see the URL for the image that we're inserting into this page. We can also put in a link. So if I wanted to link this to the admin bar's website, we could just type in theadminbar.com, and now this image will be linked to that URL. We can open it up in a new tab, set it to no follow, or change this to a sponsored link. Because we're using an image block here, we can take advantage of source set and use the full size image, a thumbnail, medium, large, etc. In this case, I want to use that full image. We also have some settings here which can also be found in the styles panel. Now this is a little bit confusing, but what GenerateBlocks tries to do is surface some of those settings that you might be most likely to use here inside that settings panel. So here, if I wanted to change the width, I could change it to maybe 200 pixels, and that's going to change the width of my image. You'll see if I flip back over here to our styles panel and go into sizing, it's also inserted that 200 pixels into our width here, so we can change it at either place. I'm going to go ahead and change that back to 100%. I typed in 100 here, but you can see it's set to pixels as the unit by default. We can click on that and choose any of these other units, or I can type in the percentage key on my keyboard and that will automatically change this unit to percentage. But let's work on this layout a little bit. Let's say I want the headline on the left-hand side and the image over on the right. To do that, I could use CSS Grid on my inner container. So we'll select our inner container again. I'll go into the layout panel, and under display, I'm going to change this to grid. Now inside of our grid layout settings, I have my grid template columns declaration and a few helpful presets inside this icon. If I click on that icon, you can see we have a few different column layouts to choose from. In this case, I just want 2 columns, so I'll select the 2 columns here. Now you can insert your own grid template columns here. In fact, if I wanted to change this out to just say 1FR, 1FR, I can type that in and it will still respect that as long as it's a valid declaration. I'm going to go ahead and use the preset here since this repeat function tends to work a little bit better responsively, and we can go about continuing to set up this layout. Now I want the headline to be kind of centered vertically in here, so we can go into our alignment panel and change the align items to align center, which will align these vertically. Of course, we could do the same layout with Flexbox if I just went in here and changed this to flex. I could go inside my flex layout settings, and I can change this from row to column and flip these back and forth however I need to. All those flex controls live here inside that flex layout, and if you already understand CSS, none of this should be much of an issue. Of course, if you're new to CSS, you might have to take a little bit more time learning how the flex properties work, which can be a little bit to wrap your mind around. I'm going to go ahead and put this back to CSS Grid since I prefer that for this kind of layout, but let's take a look at how we would need to change this responsively. We'll go ahead and go into our tablet and mobile view. These could still work as a 2-column layout, so I'm going to leave it the same there. But as we go down to our mobile breakpoint, obviously we have some issues. Everything we set up on the desktop version is trickling down to the mobile version, and here we actually want to stack these things on top of each other so that the headline is above the image. All we need to do that is go back into our grid template columns. Now that we have the mobile breakpoint selected, this is only going to affect things at that mobile breakpoint. Here, I'll just choose the 1-column preset, which will make sure that our grid is only 1 column wide. Now you can see here as we go back to tablet, it goes back to 2 columns. Of course, still 2 columns on desktop, but on mobile, we're back stacked to a single column. Any of the settings you put inside the style controls here can be controlled at the different breakpoints. So even if you wanted to make this headline red, but only on mobile, you could go in here and change this color to red. You can see it's red on mobile, but if we go back to our tablet and desktop versions, it's the blue that we assigned originally. I can imagine if you're brand new to GenerateBlocks, the complexity of all this might be a little bit overwhelming. But it's this complexity that allows this builder to be so flexible. Pretty much anything you can dream up, you can build inside the GenerateBlocks system, especially if you're using GenerateBlocks Pro. Of course, a 20-minute video isn't going to teach you everything you need to know about the system. In order to do that, you're just going to have to spend some time playing around with it. I would suggest finding some sections you like or things you've built before and try to recreate them using GenerateBlocks. As you use the system more and more, you're going to get a whole lot faster and everything's going to become more intuitive. Of course, I also have hundreds of videos here on my YouTube channel, most of them using GeneratePress and GenerateBlocks. But if you prefer a start to finish learning experience, then my good buddy Jonathan Jernigan's got a GenerateBlocks course that will take you from absolute beginner to building out full websites using the system. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would really appreciate a thumbs up. And if you have any questions, make sure to leave them down in the comments. Go ahead and hit subscribe and we'll see you in the next video.